And good evening, ladies and gents, and welcome to another Live and Laois Sports cast. I'm delighted to be joined by our usual co-hosts, Stephen Kelly
How we
and
doing, everyone?
Stephen, hi, and Evan Treacy.
Hi,
Hi, Evan.
how's it going?
Very good. And we have a full house tonight. We have Paddy Donovan from Laois Handball, and we have Jack Scully and Peter O'Sullivan from Portlaoise Panthers Basketball Club. Gentlemen, great to have
How
you
you
in this
doing?
evening.
Hi, John.
Thanks,
Thanks very
John.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, John. Good to hear you.
Now we'll start. If you don't mind, Paddy, we'll start with the basketball, man, because because when you get in full flow, I'm only messing.
Okay.
But we'll start with the basketball, and I'll start off, Peter, with yourself.
Yeah.
Some people would say Portlaoise now is a soccer and basketball town now. Would you agree, or what do you think?
I suppose we liked where we've gotten to in the last few years. I suppose the town would have always been seen as a GA, to us a rugby town and a soccer town. So for a lot of classes in a minority sport, when it comes to those, I suppose in terms of funding and stuff, we probably still are a minority sport in Ireland itself. But in Portlaoise, I think we've come a long way in the last 13 years since we set up the club, or 14 years as it is now. So we'd like to think that we put it up to the best of the clubs in town. But again, I think even the GAA, the soccer, the basketball, there's such a the players that play all seem to, and I suppose the seasons go hand in hand with us as well. So it works out for us.
Yeah. And Peter, were you there on day one when you formed the Panthers?
Yeah, well, I suppose day one was probably 55 years ago, but that's when Portlaoise Panthers name came about back at the start. But we rejuvenated it back in 2007, I think it was, when we all kind of got together. Jack will tell you he was still a juvenile. I would have never got to play club basketball as a juvenile. Ken Lynn and Shea Dooley would have set that up, but there was no club basketball on the women's side. Pack Ridgely would have had it in the schools, but not in the club. And you would have had like Team Hoffman's, Team Delaney's. There used to be different kind of teams as they were named, but never under a club. So I suppose we were there at the start in 2006, 2007, setting that up. So yeah, it's been great since then.
Yeah, I mean, you're a national power now. You're winning national cups.
Yeah.
What do you put that down to?
I was going to say, I'd always say hard work and dedication, but like in the background, there's such a brilliant committee. There's such a brilliant club itself. Everybody helps out. It's a voluntary organisation. And I think just everyone loves being there. I think it's a kind of a family atmosphere. Like I suppose when we were winning national cups at the start in 2014, 15, I was coaching. I had two sisters on the team. I had a wife on the team. I had a sister-in-law on the team. Like it was just really a kind of a family-based club. And it's the same on the men's side. There's a lot of brothers and cousins and stuff on that side as well. So I guess it's easy to say that we've always had brilliant players come up along, but again, you've got a good knit with the schools in the town, with Pack Ridgely on one side, with Peter Dignan on the men's side, and now Jack Dooley's in the school as well. So I suppose with so much basketball going on, we're bound to have good players out of it.
No, and I hate putting people on the spot, but I always do this. In the last 15 years, would you care to pick out the best female and male player that you've seen in the club colours, or is that a tricky one? Jack might help you here.
Jack might help on the men's side. I suppose we've been fortunate. We've been fortunate with the women's side of things. You can see in the last few years that we've had a load of players that went through international panels. Like I suppose the first player that we've had would have been Claire Amelia, that would have went to the States and played at Division 1 level over there. Like we've had May Phelan that's gone to DCU and played Super League at the highest level, even though we've played Super League ourselves. Then you've got your Ciara Burns. of late as well. So we've always had a kind of conveyor belt, luckily, in the last few years of Irish players on Irish standards. Jack, you might jump in on the men's side.
Please do. Thanks.
Don't be talking about me, Jack. And don't be talking about yourself either.
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention that. You're not supposed to nominate yourself.
Yeah.
I suppose in the men's side, look, I suppose I'm kind of playing senior basketball 15 years this year, and the one player that I always kind of looked up to growing up and then got a chance to play with, and I think Sully back me up, was Roddy McAfee. Like, you know, I just think he's the absolute perfect example. Like I always say to my underage teams that I coach and stuff, and to the young players, and how to treat the game and how to prepare yourself and how to be, I suppose, competitive and fair and tough and all them things. And Roddy kind of is a perfect example of all them things, you know. A fierce competitor, but wouldn't call him dirty, but it would be very good at the dark arts when needed, I suppose, you know. So yeah, Roddy would be my style. We have players like Sully's team going up there, John Fenney, like there's a load of them there, like, you know what I mean? But Roddy'd be the one now. If I had one player to pick, if I was picking the best 5 in the morning, Roddy'd be number 1 in the team sheet for me anyway, definitely.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Jack. And I'm delighted to see you didn't nominate yourself. Much too modest.
It took a lot.
Our panel tonight is very, very modest. Very, very modest. And we'll call in Paddy Donovan now. Paddy from Laois Handball here. Paddy, we'll put you on the spot. Before we get into where handball needs to go in the county, can you pick out a handballer, male and female, in the last 15 years that you thought were exceptional?
I've got to start at home in Limerick. Naturally enough, there's a McMahon, does it?
You would, Paddy, you would.
Yeah, well, good reason to. There's a McMahon lady down there. She's the current Irish ladies champion, 40 by 20, 60 by 30, one wall. She went to the World Championships in 2018 and beat everybody out of sight there, 40 by 20 singles, 40 by 20 doubles, one wall singles. This year, again, COVID, it's just men's, ladies and singles and minor this year. And she beat everybody practically to 0 on her way to the final, and is the champion. But she's not just regarded in Ireland or as a present day player. She will probably go down as an all-time great. Just not in the last 15 years, but in ladies handball, there have been maybe 10 or 15 I could name. She's right up there with the best of them. On the men's side, Paul Brady from Cavan. Yeah. A lot of people don't know what Paul Brady really has achieved. They would know that he was a Gunnar Brady from a famous football family. Held down a cornerback berth on the Cavan senior football team for about 10 years, and along the way picked up 5 world championships in a row. Now, he has broken most records. In America, he would have played in the Pro-Ams, and he won 10 US national titles. And a lot of those titles on the Pro-Am circuit, there'd be a few bob going for them, and everybody in America, Canada and Ireland goes across, and that is outside of the World Championships, that's the place. And only the great Natty Alvarado has, he has equalled Natty's record, but he hasn't broken it. Young player from Mallow called Killian Carroll deprived him of that opportunity. But those would be the 2 standouts. But we have a couple of versions of handball in Ireland. So I'll go beyond that, obviously, great Duxie Walsh. Yes. He passed away 2-3 years ago.
Much too young.
Young, but just to give you an idea what he achieved, 38 All-Ireland senior medals. At 51, he won the Irish Nationals in Talbot's Inch, beating Owen Kennedy, another decorated player. And within 3 months, he had passed away.
Huge
in
loss.
He was champion at 51. So those would be the standout players in
Duxie,
not just Irish handball, but world champion. Duxie was World Masters champion at the time.
Yeah, huge loss to both Irish handball and Irish sport in general.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And Paddy, while we have you on the hot seat, you're much too modest. You have to tell the panel here tonight about your championship win.
Going I'm not the only modest one. You asked Peter there what was the key behind the success to the basketball club. Peter has been picking up monthly and national awards there for coaching, and I think even this year,
well said, Paddy.
I think even this year he won the national coach award. Like
yes,
you talk about modest leashmen.
It's a team sport.
There in the basketball club.
No, if you're good, you're good. No, well said, Paddy.
Okay, good. Going back to your question, I went to the World Championships in 2018, and I played in 2003 in Ireland. I played in 2012 in Ireland and travelled to Calgary 2015, and in 2018. Now I would have picked up minor awards, some of those silver medals and that, but in 2018, I won the World Championship over 50s 40 by 20 singles, and strangely enough, in that final, I was on one side of the draw. My doubles partner from Limerick was in the other side of the draw. He beat the world number one on his side, and I picked off a few on my side, and we actually met in the final. And haven't played for an hour and a half, I suppose. Jack was talking about the dark arts there. You haven't seen dark arts until you played Masters handball. But we spent an hour trying to outwit one another, an hour and a half. Yeah. And that evening we went off and we played the doubles together. So bit of an experience. I was an overnight hit after 53 years. Well done, Paddy. A great win for Laois and Limerick. Yeah. Yeah, but it wouldn't have been the first for Laois. No. Tomas Lennon and my son Michael picked up a World Championship Men's C in 2015 in Calgary. So I bragging rights in my house, I'm afraid. Yeah. They don't go my way all the time. You're dead right. Now, this is the perfect opportunity for Stephen and Evan. Do you want to drill the lads here? A couple of questions.
Evan, you can go first if you want. I don't mind if you want to go.
Just about handball, do you think it's a sport that needs to be covered by the media more?
We're part of the GAA family. Hurling football comes first, camogie, ladies football, and then you're down to handball and rounders. So we're the 5th GAA sport. That's where we come in. In terms of media coverage, we're an indoor sport. You can't pass by a handball alley and just say, oh God, I wonder what's going on in there, if you know what I mean. Whereas GAA are outdoor sports, they're visible, they're on the TV, they're on the radio, they fill the inches on papers. Like, I'm not sure if anybody there in the panel ever heard of Paul Brady. Yeah. Like, he was 5-time world champion, and I doubt if they ever heard his name. So that's where we are at in media terms. We need somebody in the media in our own organisation. We don't have a media officer even at GAA handball level in Croke Park. But if we could get even a part-time one, certainly Facebook, Twitter would fill, and we might gain some traction. But probably it's as much our own fault as it is the media's, will say, for not covering it.
Yeah. Do you think handball clubs receive sufficient funding?
Look, the handball clubs that are progressive and that put in plan and put in applications to the lotto, there's sufficient funding there in place for the progressive clubs. We need volunteers at local level. We need coaches at local level. There's a big drop off in handball. There's big numbers of young kids introduced to handball, and come 14, 15, when they specialise into their chosen sport, they're inclined to go for the team sport. They're inclined to try and get after that county jersey. They'll play basketball because there's weekends away with groups of 10 and 15 players. Whereas if you're going to go to handball, you're going to be ploughing a lone furrow yourself. You're going to spend a lot of time on the court on your own, honing skills. So that's kind of where we're at in handball. It's a kind of a lonely journey. It's much the same as a young golfer trying to make it, or a young individual maybe trying to do shot or discus or something like that. You know, so media, as regards media and funding, I think we're reasonably well funded, but we need to develop the momentum from the volunteer side, and when the volunteers get up with a project, it's easy to tap into the funds.
In terms of competitions, where would you see Laois as competitors?
Okay, there are some very strong traditional counties right beside us. Kilkenny covered courts going back 50, 60 years. Elite coaches, Wexford elite coaches. You go to Tyrone, Meath, Dublin, elite coaches everywhere, elite adults everywhere. In Laois, we have two small rural clubs, St. Bridget's in Crettyard and Cullyhill. They're basically at this stage, they're juvenile is the place where we're at. The adults really picked it up as junior B players at adults and could never progress. We don't have the history of the game here. But our juveniles punch above their weight. For example, in Cullyhill, 14 juveniles in Cullyhill reached Leinster finals this year. They would have taken out Kilkenny players and Wexford players to get that far. So there is progress. There is juvenile winners out there, a lot of them girls. But there is progress being made. But again, the drop off at 15 and 16 is kind of killing us a bit.
And Peter and Jack, is that a problem with basketball as well, that you get the drop off at 14, 15, 16?
I suppose when I was growing up, we'd always have big numbers, kind of under 10, under 12, under 14, and then you like 15 years ago, 20 years ago, you would have seen a drop off heading to GAA, soccer, rugby. Now I coached under 14 or 16 boys teams in the clubs there the last kind of 3 or 4 years, and it's actually swapped now. Like, you know, I have a lot of lads that are seeing success in basketball and are actually giving up football and hurling to come play basketball. I have hurling and football coaches ringing me to find out what nights there is in basketball so they can organise a night, because when they clash, the boys are picking the basketball over the GA. Like, you know, and that's a huge switch in the last 15 years. You know what I mean? But that all comes from the culture that's in our club and the environment that we try and provide for the kids when they come down there, and success breeds success. Like, you know what I mean? Kids, as much as they like being participating, they enjoy now a medal in the pocket too, and they enjoy that side of it, you know. But again, it's down to what Sully was saying. It's the environment we have down in that club, and it's the people that are down in the club, and that's the reason the kids love it down there so much. So there has been a massive switch. Now, still we lose a couple of kids to football and hurling, like, but it wouldn't be anywhere near compared to what would have been 15, 20 years ago. Yeah. God, it's changed times. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you said that 20 years ago, you'd be locked up. Yeah, well, it just didn't happen 20 years ago. No, it just didn't happen. Yeah. No. Stephen, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, sure thing. In terms of the handball, I was just wondering, Paddy, do you think, like, I'm just interested to know, like, were you always interested in playing handball, or is it something that just kind of came about? And is there anyone you kind of looked up to in particular when you were growing up playing the game?
I grew up in Limerick in a hospital, and believe it or not, the two coaches that coached me as a juvenile were Tom and John Quish, and they happened to be the All-Ireland senior doubles champions at the time. So you can imagine being a young fella down there following the sport that, like, I played hurling and football and all the sports down there, but they managed the community games team. We won gold in community games. They managed the Fail in the Gale team. We won gold in Division 1 and Fail in the Gale. So from 13 and 14, I was entrenched in it. Again, won under 15 community games team event. So by the time I was getting on to 16, while I was playing hurling and football, I was going off watching the senior handballers and learning the tactics and everything that goes into making a senior player, really, and that was my focus. But at 19, I joined the Guards. I came up here to Portlaoise, no club, no county board. In terms of landing, an unlucky land. If I landed in Borough, I landed in Kilkenny, or landed any place else, career might have gone elsewhere, but didn't. I went off playing golf and then came back to handball as a masters player. So that's my background, basically.
And I was just wondering as well, like, what kind of, like, training would you do? Like, what would a typical training day be like for you? As you were, like, for argument's sake, when you're preparing for the World Championships, what would you have done particularly? Like, would there be a consistent thing you would have done day in, day out kind of thing, or?
Not really as a master. If you go back a little bit earlier, I was playing at junior level, even though I was 36, 37, 38. Every competition I went to, I sat down beside the senior players and I was given a look at six packs. I was looking at stretching regimes, diet. I would have read sports psychology books. Really, I was getting ready to be a master, but I was running 5K and 10K races around Portlaoise. I had 2 young fellas here in the house. One of them was interested in cross country. I had a basketballer here in the house, so I was out with basketball. But it's the crossover really from several sports really that kind of separates, in my opinion, some of the good sportsmen. And I would have had a background in a lot of sports as a young lad, but I wouldn't have lifted a lot of weights. You can overtrain as a master. Tennis elbow is a problem. I would have pulled hamstrings by training that little bit too much. I was out in Ockavale in Stradbally with the Laois juvenile athletes. Anne Keenan Buckley used to go around there and do 2 rounds and up the hill the 3rd time. And of course, I was stupid enough to try and run up after her every now and again. And I found that sometimes you can overdo it. So as a masters player, you really measure your cloth according to what your body is telling you. But I would have done everything at that any of the other sports lads would have done really.
Very good. Probably just my last one there for yourself, Paddy, as well. I just thought it'd be something a bit interesting, just a different kind of angle. Like, would there be any motto you'd have, say, yourself to kind of that would have lived by, maybe a motto if you were to kind of encourage someone to play? What would your motto be? Would you have a motto or anything like that? Or did you ever think about it?
That for you, Jack?
No, I'd say that's for you.
No, it's for you. It's for you, Paddy, as well. Sorry. Just if you had a motto, just curious about it.
We have a motto in handball, and it's a game for life. You can start as young as under 8, 10s. There's world championships under 11s, boys and girls. You can leave it and come back to it. There's over 35s, 40, 45 up, and I have seen world championships up as far as 70, 75, and I've even seen an over 80s world championship game. It's a game for life.
Yeah. Very good.
A bit like basketball, in a sense.
Yeah.
Jack, Peter, what do you think? You keep going into your 80s?
I was going to say, I suppose this year I'll be 21 plus a few more years. But I'll be hitting, it'll actually be, I suppose, my first year masters coming up soon enough. But my wife has played masters the last few years, but they went to the World Championships with Ireland, herself and her sister, and 2 of the other girls from the club, Anne-Marie Troy and Pamela Grogan. But again, they said the highlight of the whole World Championships in Finland was the over 80s game between the United States and I think it could have been Russia or someone like that. But said, like, to see players of that age, even 80, 81, playing basketball. Now, a bit slower than what we'd be playing at, but just, I suppose, the same things go through your head, and I suppose just things are a bit slower in the arms and the feet, I suppose. Yeah.
But that's a similarity between the two sports. But there are huge differences. I mean, I just got from Paddy that handball is a more solitary sport. It's a more solitary pastime. Basketball, obviously, team sport. But you're at the other end of the spectrum, Jack and Peter, in that you're almost a victim of your own success in the Portlaoise Panthers. You have so many teams. Could you take us through, like, where you are at the moment, the number of teams you have, and now, of course, your search for a new home?
Yeah. I suppose, I think at last count we had 35 teams between the juvenile setup and the senior setup. As well as that, then we have our 2 academies for 4 and 5-year-olds, 6 and 7-year-olds, and then you have your masters set up as well. So again, we're taking off every ages, plus the all-inclusive team, which we added this year. So yeah, again, that's in the last 15 years. So St. Mary's Hall has been a brilliant venue for us for the last number of years. But again, like everything, you start to outgrow these places. We just found it very difficult the last few years to get as many hours as we needed in the hall. Then I'm going to say, luckily, we got in contact with Portlaoise College, and Noel Daly was very good to us with the hours he gave us. But as Jack knows, he's had to take his teams over to Mountmellick. Some of them have had to go to Clonaslee. So again, you're looking for parents to do a lot of dropping off and collecting and stuff like that. So again, I suppose the frustrations, even Shea Dooley will say, after winning the last National Cup and been asked the question of, where are you going to put your cup and whatever else. We'd no venue to be able to put it into a silverware cabinet. I suppose it hit him home, and Shay being one of the, I suppose, the most volunteers for us now, he'd be the biggest one, and for him to be kind of emotional about not having this situation in place, I suppose it's driven him and driven us to look for our own place, and again, as we say, a place to call home.
Yeah, well, yeah, you could quite rightly argue Shay is Mr. Portlaoise Panthers.
Oh, without doubt. There is committee there, but which Shay is the chairperson, has been there for years and years, and was never found unwanted. I suppose he has the van there, and everything is loaded into the back of it to go to different games, to go to different venues. I suppose back in the day there would have been kids in the back of it as well, going to anywhere. We won't talk too much about that, but anyone that was left behind, Shay was bringing them. So I suppose he'd be emotional about sport.
Of course,
we really get to him, and again, it's the forefront of this development committee again, trying to get it over the line. Yeah,
and Jack, come in here on the development committee. Like, what was the thinking behind it, and what is the goal? Where do you want to be in, we'll say, 5 years' time? What's the plan?
I suppose the reason the development committee came about was, it was kind of, so we have an executive committee, and Sully was on it for years, and Shay was on it, and I'm on it, and loads of people on it. But it was kind of, it was just because the committee is so busy and there's so many things to do in running a club of this size. While we were kind of working at the new hall in the background with different ideas and stuff, it was never getting undivided attention of a core group of people with the skills that are needed to put a project like this together. So a committee was formed of people that have expertise in finances and government and all this sort of stuff. Do you know what I mean? Because it's not an easy thing to put together. So that was the idea behind the group getting together.
Yes.
And their sole purpose now is to get us into a new hall. So the executive committee still works away, running the day-to-day business of the club, and this committee are on their own, working away on the work that needs to be done to get us over the line in this venture. I suppose in 5 years' time, I want to be walking into a Portlaoise Panthers hall that we run, where every team that wants to train can train, that every kid that wants to play basketball wants to play basketball, and that we're not. I give a example, my under 14 team played a league final last year. It was against Kilkenny, and the winners won the league, and it was our home game, and we need to play them over in Clonaslee. Do you know?
Yeah.
I think that's that's just every young kid wants to play. If that game was in St. Mary's Hall, we would have packed the hall because it's in Portlaoise, and instead it was over in Clonaslee at 8 o'clock on a Wednesday night. Do you know what I mean? And it's just. It's a memory that them kids are going to either have or not have now going forward. You know what I mean? It should have been a big night for them. You know what I mean? And then we were over in Clonaslee, 30 minutes up Three Blue Mountains on a wet. You know what I mean? Instead of being in our own hall. So that's where we want to be in 5 years' time.
But people will make the argument, Jack, and I think it's a valid one too, that there are other sports clubs in Portlaoise, and they have to travel outside of the town to play their games. I'll give you the example there. A Portlaoise badminton club. Yeah. And they have to play over in Vicarstown, for example.
Yeah, and we're totally
a
open.
A lot of sports in the same boat.
Yeah. But Peter take this one about the community aspect of it,
Yeah, well, Niall Davis is very involved in the basketball club. He's very involved in the badminton, and we've sat down with him and discussed what their needs are for this. This is not just. Again, this is our frustrations of trying to get a venue. Now calling it, we'd like to be able to call it Laois Basketball Arena ourselves. That again, it just makes it easy for us as a development committee to have something to aim for. But it's not just us, I suppose, rowing our own boat here. We want to bring in the likes and even say the successes that handball, and I know more of a GAA fixture as well, but there's nothing to say. I've seen the ones in Culla Hill is a lovely community centre, but again, why should Paddy have to go to Culla Hill to train when there could be something set up in Portlaoise? These are not just basketball. We're looking at, I suppose, we did out our design of what we want, but again, it's going to come to a stage where we have to fully sit down with every organisation, and again, we call them minority sports, but that's what we're going to have to do. We're not going as an isolated project here. We understand that if we get 2 courts or a 3-court premises, that badminton will be used in 1 or 2 courts or 3 courts. They have a big tournament. We have to facilitate it.
Yeah.
We're not going to get the grants based on ourselves. We're going to have to do this with other clubs as well. So we've been looking at the different options. We've been having these Zoom calls with the councillors as well. So we've been fighting our corner, I suppose.
Good. And speaking of multi-use, multi-purpose sports centres, Paddy, you had a very interesting photo up on online today. Can you tell me more about it?
Yeah, I suppose one-wall handball is the growing sport in Ireland version. It takes 250,000 to build a 40 by 20 court that they have in Cullehill and in Craigyard. Starting up a club and trying to do something like that is just exhaustive. So I would have played one wall for the last maybe 5 years. I've played in centres all over Ireland, but they're out in there's some of them, they're in small communities, again, grant aided, where they're multi-purpose. Like the one that you saw today, they had 3 one-wall handball courts with fantastic opportunity to play blitzes, several age groups to one day, several grades. You also would have seen in that photograph where there was 3 badminton courts being used when the handball courts were not being used. Yes. There was an indoor soccer hall, and I think there was 3 basketball courts on it.
Yes. And the minute I saw that, I knew exactly you're an old fox, Paddy, like myself. I'd say you were thinking Hayes is going to pick up on that photo and bring it up, and I thought that's perfect because then you can basically accommodate the basketball, the handball, badminton, squash. Like, am I leaving out? And viewers, I mean, obviously,
you're leaving out a big one in Portlaoise, the boxing club. Yeah. They have a fantastic ring, great gym.
Yes.
I never saw a boxer box in Portlaoise. I'd put my head in through the door when they were in St. Mary's to have a look at TJ Donovan at one stage.
Yes.
And at that stage, he was getting ready to fight John Evan, who went on to the Olympics. What a talent!
Unbelievable.
We have 2 Riley brothers. One of them qualified for the Olympics.
Correct.
You'll hear very little about young Bernard Riley, a European champ, gold medalist.
Yes.
Again, he's sitting up in a corner in Portlaoise, not to be seen. If we had this community hall, I can't imagine what Eugene Lecumber and Pat Ryan would put together to not just sport for Laois. Portlaoise can be a hub. We're on the motorways, we're on the railway line, we're on the post lines, we're in the centre of the country. I think actually the Panthers are selling themselves short with putting in a small hall for 2 or maybe 3 courts. There is ample room for all the sports to grow and maybe be a little bit ambitious that 2 sports on the one day could easily go ahead. And if you're talking about sites around the town, and Peter, there's committee, would have explored every one of them. There's 80 acres belong to the council up in Tocker, or up at the Tocker roundabout.
Yes.
That's doable. But again, my opinion, that's outside the town. You go outside the door of that complex, there's no shops, no chippers, cinema, shops, ATM, sports drinks, everything that you need as a sports person is down the town. 26 acres in Terrells,
yes.
The green lung of Portlaoise. What could be more healthier than a sports hall in there?
Yeah.
Again, there's a school, 2 schools on the Aucknaharna side of that site, and I was checking the numbers today. There's 1,400 students in the Holy Family School, yes. And there's upwards of 400 in the Educate Together. There's a nursery for you, Jack, to avail of. 1,800 primary school students within walking distance of that site.
And the Gael Skull and Maryborough.
Yes, all within walking distance. Absolutely. But if you're really looking for a site, though, in Portlaoise, there's 24 million going to be spent on the extension to the Garda station.
Yes.
Above the top of the town. Perfect. It's going to be a regional headquarters. There was a plan for a Garda station elsewhere on the Stradbally Road.
Yes, and that
the history you could give it to a Garda station that's not been built. It's sitting there since I came to Portlaoise 38 years ago.
Yes, it's sitting there a long time, Paddy.
I think the OPW and whoever put up the sign for the Garda station before a general election, whoever those politicians were, I think they should be picking up the phone to Peter and saying, what can we do for you?
Well, actually, it's a very, very good point. And Paddy, you make a very, very valid point for Jack and to Peter that maybe think a little bit bigger. And I would agree with Paddy that you are selling yourselves a bit short there. I mean, the club, and I hear it, you'd be talking to people, you're a very, very well-run club. Very, very well-run club. And really, what Paddy's getting at, I think what you're getting at, Paddy, if you could have a regional sports centre to cater for all those sports.
Yeah, but I suppose, John, the only thing is with that, it would have done a consultation process. The council did it, brought in an outside crowd to do it, and I know Caroline Dwan Stanley had came out with the basis of what had came out of that, because we weren't given it, but that it was upward of 20 million was what the facility was going to cost. Now, we're not that big a club to be taking on a burden of anything like that. When you sit down and you're looking at the infrastructure grants, you're going to get, you may get up to 7% on sports infrastructure grants. Now, the difference, that 30% is a lot to any club or any, like you're not going to get this, the governing bodies, the GA aren't going to help out the handball, Badminton Ireland aren't going to help out Portlaoise Badminton Club, and Basketball Ireland just don't have the funds to help out Portlaoise Basketball Club. So the difference, that's why the 30% that we're going to miss out on has to be a figure that is achievable to the basketball club or to whatever other sports. Like whatever facility we look to have built, we'll be looking for revenue streams or ways of bringing in, and even the badminton club to use the facilities around us as well, and whatever else is there. Having a multi-centre is just, I'm not saying it's not achievable, but it's a far distance than we'd expect.
Yeah, but I want to paint a picture for you, man. You probably will all laugh at me, but I don't mind saying this. Like, I can see it in 20 years' time. Portlaoise is going to be a city. And I mean, I said it 5-10 years ago, and people are going, no, you're raving, you're touched. But I can see the population. Like, Paddy, you're here 38 years. I'm here 20 years. Like, when we arrived in Portlaoise, I'd say there was maybe 8,000. There's probably 28,000 now in the town. That's the way the town is going. So, I mean, on that basis, and looking ahead, that maybe if and I know what you're saying, and my counter argument would be, if you need the money will be found somewhere. It'll always be found, because what the worst thing that could happen is that you put in and your club mates put in all this work, and you'll get the facility. I know the facility is going to happen, but then 15 years later, it's too small, and you're back to square one. You're back to square one. What's your take on that?
No, I do see your point. I really do, I suppose. But I suppose you look at when you came to the town 20 years ago, John, what was in the town at that stage? Like, the amenities haven't really changed. You have an outdoor park, a town park, a leisure centre. You can see the trouble that's in at the moment.
Yes.
Because it's probably run by a private or outside company or whatever. Like, what we're looking to do is to run this voluntarily. As Pat Ritchie would always say, the St. Mary's of old, before it moved into St. Mary's, was ran by a community, and mainly people that were basketball. Yes. My parents were on committees all the way up along with St. Mary's. The majority of people are basketball when it runs those facilities, and it has to stay in a voluntary role, I think. It's the same with the GAA, same with the rugby club. These clubs stay the way they are because they're ran voluntarily. There's no outside pickings that you have to pay them to do it. So I'm just saying, the progression, even probably from Paddy's days up to your days when you came into town, what has progressed so far, John? Like, we don't have a college. We haven't seen anything. We're all about getting in the investments for businesses and stuff, which is brilliant. And Tucker is based on that. But you could be bringing in another 5,000 people into the town in the next 5 years. What are they going to do? So I do see your point as to what
it's a very good question. Peter. A very, very good question. Evan or Stephen, do you want to jump in here? Evan, you've been quiet. Sorry, it's my fault.
In terms of player development, where do you see yourselves in, say, 10 years' time?
Jack?
Well, I suppose like 15 years ago in 2007, we started a club. If you told us that by 2020 we'd have 4 national cups. We'd have numerous Irish internationals, Irish international captains. Like Claire Mealy and Shauna Dooley were captains of their respective Irish teams. I don't know if I would have believed you, like, you know. So, like, I suppose what we want to do is continue doing what we're doing at the moment, like, you know what I mean. Again, I bring it back to the culture that's in the club, like, you know what I mean. We have a very good, I don't want to put it down to like a winning culture, but like success breeds success, like, you know what I mean. And when young kids go down to the hall and they see Claire Mealy running down the floor, or Shauna Dooley, an Irish captain, running down the floor, like, or travelling to Bosnia or wherever she's going representing her country, like that couldn't do anything but inspire a young child to say, I want to be that person, like, you know what I mean. So we just want to be there and be able to provide facilities and provide the structures that will give every child the opportunity to be as successful in the sport of basketball as they possibly can. And at the moment, the facilities we have are kind of holding us back a small bit, like, you know what I mean. And eventually we're going to hit a point where we can do no more, you know what I mean. So we want to grow, and we want our player base to grow, and we want the standard of our coaches to grow, and we're always trying to push new limits and develop the club on every kind of way, like financially, governance wise, player management wise, upskilling the coaches and upskilling our facilities now is the main thing that's going to help us get to the next level, you know what I mean. So we're always trying to push the boundaries and develop every single year, you know. So I don't think you can put a cap on where we want to end up. So the sky's the limit for us, and we're all willing to get stuck in and keep going, you know.
What would be your biggest goal for 2021?
For the club,
to get basketball going again.
Yeah. To play basketball, get down to the hall, coaching, playing, just getting back to watching matches, just normality.
Who would be your biggest rivals?
So I suppose you could look at it on a few different levels. So locally, we play in the Midland League, which is our local league, and underage and senior. Our biggest rivals in the last 10-15 years would be Kestrels and Port Harrington. You know, we'd have some ding-dong battles with them in kind of every age group. But I mean, so they'd be our local rivals. On a national stage, then, like, over the years, we've had, like, the women's national E team have had some cracking rivalries with, like, Dynamo Oblitz up in Inchicore, Lee Imperials a couple of years ago. Like, last year was Trinity, you know. So we'd have friends all over the country, I suppose, is the way I put it.
Yeah, it's a good sign of a club when you've rivals everywhere you turn.
Yeah, well, that's it. They keep coming.
They keep coming at you. Well, everyone wants to knock the champion. Everyone wants to knock the champion.
That's it, yeah.
Stephen, you've been...
Yeah. No, you're not. I was just wondering, guys, in terms of the basketball, I was wondering what you think, because I live up here in Dublin, like, and I just see that, like, there seems to be like a lack of, like, I know there's Leicester, they're not that far away from me here. What do you think they could do, like, as a, like nationally, what do you think could be done to kind of get basketball up to, like, say, the level? Or do you think that's ever going to get to that stage? Because there does need to be kind of like a specific kind of area where basketball is very strong, and then there's kind of a lack of it, say, in other areas. Because I can only think of a few clubs up here there's actually basketball present. So I was just wondering what you think on that, like what could be done to bring basketball up to kind of like a higher level, like on a national level, I suppose.
Good question.
Because Dublin and Cork would be the main two cities. Again, it's based, a lot of it is based around colleges, as well as the club scene, I suppose. Like Leicester, you're probably talking about one of the strongest clubs, men's and women's, every year. They're Super League in both. They have a massive underage setup. It's probably the best club setup in Dublin at the moment. And again, Cork will tell you that Cork is the home of basketball. So again, you have two areas that are really strong. To be honest, I'd say we're punching above our weight, not being in a college-based town or city. Like Belfast now are getting better on both sides as well. So again, it seems to be city and college areas, because even some of the players that we've lost Mayfield and into Dublin, again, when they're heading off to college, you're going to lose for a few years. But you're trying to keep development from the lower underage, knowing and hoping that they'll come back to play with you after their college year.
Yeah.
So I think it, like basketball in general, over the last 6-7 years has really got strong in Ireland. You just have to look at the amount of players that have gone over to America to college, and are not just playing in Division 3, they're playing in Division 2, Division 1. That's men's and women's. Ireland is starting to knock off big teams in the European Championships as well. They've been up to A division in the women's side of things. So it is progressing, but again, a lot of it is down to infrastructure. A lot of it is down to where we can play, the facilities. It's not just Portlaoise.
Yeah.
We're just showing our frustrations, and I kind of hoping that the community get behind it, I suppose, locally.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, good question, Stephen. Like, I remember, and of course Paddy will remember, Peter, you might remember, but you might. No, you're probably too young to remember. Back in the 80s, and you'd have basketball.
She isn't too young to remember.
Way too young to remember, Peter. And you'd have live basketball games on the TV, on RTE, every Saturday afternoon. You'd have Neptune, Blue Demons, the two big cock clubs. You'd have Ballina were very strong, Lee McHale, and basketball was huge then. And you had like the American players playing with the various clubs. They were superstars. I'd love to see basketball get back up to that level, or even exceed that level. I mean, it was a huge sport back in the 80s.
Yeah. Now the Irish players are up at that level.
Yeah.
It's probably the funding of getting the American players in. Like I think Jack's been down at a few of the games down in Tralee. Like Donovan leaving football has been the best thing for basketball in a long time, because he's bringing in, like, I think they were selling out the 1,000 seated arena well before the game would start. You know, that's brought it on, it's progressed it, and other clubs have had to step up in the same way and try promote the game locally as well. Now we've seen an upturn in our games. We're at the National League level, so we're one below it. But again, you can see that there's a kind of that life coming back into the game. But again, it's probably going to be a money thing. Like, I think there was massive sponsors. You would have had Burgerland back in the down there. You had big sponsors, lads that were probably getting money from America as well, of people that had immigrated. So yeah, just we'd absolutely love it. Yeah. Again, not saying we suffer the same as Paddy was saying with the handball, with media, and that it's not as big. TG Carr come in when it comes to the National Cup finals, which is brilliant, and it's great to be able to see it. But no, we're not seeing enough basketball on the telly. We're looking at English teams at the moment on Sky. Mm-hmm. American game.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bugbear of mine that even the so-called majority sports will take the GA. Even if you go down a level, we'll say in the hurling Joe McDonagh Cup, there's no coverage in the national media, and on RTE especially. I mean, and I don't want to knock RTE, but I mean, my gut feeling is in the last 10 years, the quality of sports coverage has dipped on RTE. I don't know if somebody's literally taking their eye off the ball. Excuse the pun. I don't know why, because I mean, camera equipment is so cheap now. I mean, it's easy. Send a man out, at least get a few minutes of footage. Same with the basketball, same with the handball. I mean, Paddy, I mean, like, what's the solution? Is there scope there for all the minority sports basically to come together and to pool their resources, their media resources, and have a channel of their own?
You mentioned a famous basketball player there, Lee McHale from Ballina. Yeah, he's famous. Why? He's a GA player that plays basketball. The biggest name that you mentioned in basketball in the last 2 or 3 years is Kieran Donaghy from Kerry. Again, GA man that plays basketball. The crossover and skills between football and basketball, I think the GA are missing a trick here. They should be encouraging their players to play basketball. Jack will tell you there about the Laois pair that marked one another in a basketball court that he would have played on. Yeah. Kieran Lillis would have marked Donny Kingston, for example. Two best fielders of the ball in Laois at the moment. Strong in possession, they break up play, they dispossess other players. There's the Laois example of, like Peter mentioned there, that the GA mightn't get behind us. I'm not so sure about that. If you go down to Kilkenny, the two sublime hurlers are DJ Carey and his cousin Richie Hogan, both All Ireland handball champions. Correct. And if you go to minor hurling in Kilkenny, the hurler of the year last year in minor was a guy called Billy Drennan from Galmoy, top scorer. Billy is the minor All-Ireland 60 by 30 champion this year. So the transfer of skills between one sport and another, if you go to the racket sports, if you go to spin and table tennis, you learn so much. I'm not so sure Peter is correct when he says the GA might not roll in behind this. But going back to your media coverage, the famous basketball players are the ones that play GAA that are out there in front of the cameras for everybody to see. Now, I had children play basketball, so I followed the National League for a little bit. But again, it was very sporadic. And God help us when you're going to see a handball final in RTE again. I don't know, maybe World Championships might get there at some stage. They were due this year. We were all ready. There's a pot of money there to do it. Cancelled. Like, our sport is in real trouble. It's an indoor sport. With COVID, I think you're 19 times more time to get it in an indoor space than outdoor.
Yeah.
We're going to be last back. I don't know about basketball. Boxing is in trouble. You know, so the media, when they pick up, the GA now is going to get, rugby is going to get all the attention because that's all we have probably for this year. We're really going to be in trouble, the indoor sports, when we come back, maybe at the end of 2021, I think. Media coverage will be non-existent for us.
Well, for that reason and for the reasons we've mentioned before, it could be there could be a case made that the minority sports need to pull together, approach government and say, look, we need extra funding and we also need extra media exposure, because the state broadcaster needs to cover all the sports within reason that's played in the state.
Yeah, but if you look at the grants that are being made by the government, they spend their money on national organisations.
Yeah.
If you go to the national organisations from the last government and what Shane Ross gave money to, God help us if you know what I mean. Yeah. But the GA are going to hoover up. They're providing the services. They're providing their pitches for vaccinations, for testing. There's going to be a payback. Rugby in Dublin 4 outside the door of RTE, that's getting the next ledge of funding. By the time they get to basketball, which has a chance because of the numbers, but like the trickle down, by the time they get to me in Laois, Lord God, pennies from heaven.
Hopefully we will see after this crisis, we'll see a more level playing field for the so-called minority sports. And speaking of 2021, Jack, I know you want games to start back. Anything you're looking forward to personally, career-wise, anything you want to do now that you've realised in the last 10 months, well, I was putting this off and I need to do this?
Lose a bit of weight, John.
Like myself.
I went to buy a shirt there a week before Christmas and the buttons didn't really want to close. So I've kind of decided the New Year's resolution at the moment is to lose a bit of weight and get a bit of fitness back. Now, how long that lasts, I think that the longer step up Roundstays close, the better for me, I think.
I'm in the same boat. How about you, Peter?
Not really, I suppose. We do miss the basketball. So again, we thought we were only about 3 months ago. We thought we were going to get something in March. We live in hope. As Paddy said, it's probably going to be the back end of 2021 that we see some basketball. But it's trying to keep the girls going. From my side, that we need to get them back on. Like, I suppose even Martin Kojak Conroy is coaching the under-20 girls international team. Like, they're due to go to the European Championships in the summer. Now we'd have, I think, at the moment he has five of the Portlaoise girls are on the extended panel, but like they can't play basketball, but they're expected to go to this European Championships with a lack of basketball, and we're one of the only in Europe that aren't playing at the moment at the highest levels. So even that, if we could even get them back playing at some sort of level by April, May, it'd be brilliant
well,
from our
absolutely.
side. So.
Well, yeah, by any definition, they're elite players.
Yeah,
so
pretty much like they're at the highest level.
Yeah.
Again, we were hoping to do a good run in the under-20 National Cup this year, and I suppose we're going to have to wait till next year because we'd have the same team again to go at that. And then I suppose personally, probably the same as Jack. I haven't tried on my shirt in a while, but I presume I'm the same as him.
Fair enough. And Paddy, over to you. Apart from Limerick winning a 2 in a row, what else do you want to see happen this year?
Right, just before COVID hit, we had a couple of girls that were really going well in Cullehill. There's 3 Brophy sisters out there. One of them had reached an All-Ireland final, I think, on about the 1st of March. Myself, I was in Masters Doubles Leinster final on the 6th of March, and we won. We're waiting for a date for an All-Ireland semi-final, and this year we had World Championships, and it's just gone out the window. So, look, I have other issues. I don't know about getting back on the court again, but I'm looking forward to those 14 players that reach Leinster finals. I'm looking forward to going out to Cullehill. If the World Championships isn't in Ireland, it'll switch to Canada or America in 3 years. We'll be going. There'll be a band of blue jerseys heading for the airport.
Brilliant.
And that would be a 3-year goal, but I can't. I'm itching to get back to coach those young players in Laois, and the same in St. Bridget's in Monavale. There's a nursery group up there, and well capable. So we'll be back again, but again, we're going to be the last sport probably to be rolled out. So between now and then, I'm going to be looking at Jack online there. We happen to work for the same company. Stand back from the breakfast table, Jack, when you go in the morning.
This is it. Bread and water. That's it. Bread and water. Strict diet. Well, gents, Jack, Peter, Paddy, thanks for coming in this evening. To Evan and Stephen, as always, thanks. You're wonderful. And to our viewers, I hope you're all well. Stay safe. And please, God, the sport will come back. Local sport will come back soon, because I think we're all missing it now. We're climbing the walls at this stage. And we'll be back next Wednesday at the same time. So if you want to appear on the show, let us know. PM us and DM us and email us, news@laoispeople.ie. And if you have any issues at all from tonight's show or any of the previous shows, let us know. And if you have any suggestions about what we should be covering, let us know. And once we hear from you, we'll try and do our best for you. That's all I can say. So, gents, thanks for coming in. And of course, we'd love to get more ladies in. And we're working on that. And of course, I have to say, before I go, Peter and Jack, your female club mate came across very well on Midlands Radio 3.
Linda,
recently.
Yeah, she did.
Fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful ambassador for your club. So we might get Linda on. We might twist her arm in a couple of weeks' time. She's brilliant.
She takes no prisoners, John, just so you know.
I know, but she's brilliant. She comes across brilliant. She's
fantastic lady.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to see it. Yeah. And so, gents, have a great evening and enjoy the rest of the weekend. And hopefully we'll see you on the court soon.
Thanks, John.
Thanks a million.
Bye, folks. See you, Paddy. Thanks, lads.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks, John.